Welcome back. Now, the Artificial Intelligence Act of the European Union officially went into effect on August 1st. This is a crucial piece of law that ensures that deployment of artificial intelligence in a manner that is both safe and ethical is in place. As such, South African businesses active in the EU market are required to examine and modify their AI systems to comply with these new requirements. AI and automation thought leader and BusinessDay contributor Johan Steyn joins us now with more insights. Johan, a pleasure. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Johan. Always a pleasure talking to you. Very interesting now. I think every time you and I have spoken, I always ask, where are we with the regulation here? It looks like the EU's on top of it. Let's talk about this AI Act that emerges from the region.
Yeah, look, it's been coming for some years now. It's obviously a massive region, many member countries. They needed to get everyone's input and approval. But it's good to see that it is finally been enacted into law. There are still some steps that's waiting for us with this legislation over the next few years, but it's groundbreaking. It's needed. There are many other countries doing the same, but I think the EU is probably the leaders of the pack, and we all will have to adapt to it and possibly use it, or much of it, in our own national legislation regarding AI.
It's very also interesting, I guess, because like we're developing this legislation as the technology develops. So I know that the technology definitely outpacing the legislation there. But I'm keen just to speak about some of the provisions here, Johan, that you believe are worthy of noting and that do present some complexities already.
Look, just to comment on what you said there, innovation always precedes regulation. But the pace of change and the increase of power in the AI field at the moment, I think we should probably have new legislation and regulations annually, if not more often than that, going forward. But what I do like about the EU AI Act is primarily transparency and accountability. In other words, as consumers, whether it's banks or telcos or insurance companies, I have the right to know what you do with my data, not just from a privacy point of view. That legislation has been around for a while, but how your algorithms make decisions based on me as a consumer, whether it's credit decisions and the like, or possibly even healthcare decisions. When can I go to the hospital and what kind of care can I get? So the fact that it should be transparent and that also my service provider should be able to explain it to me is really encouraging. And that last point, I'd love for us to unpack a bit, because can you imagine how big our call centers will get when this comes to South Africa?
Let's talk about that, because of course there's always potential with a development like that in South Africa. I'll say opportunities and threats. First of all, there's a huge threat of non-compliance here in South Africa, but also an opportunity for, of course, a whole industry to emerge for compliance.
Absolutely. Look, I think as South Africans, we are creative. Our privacy legislation for PR followed closely behind the GDPR in Europe and is quite aligned to it. We need to quickly, as a nation, and obviously as our government, should be able to legislate for this. And there's a lot happening. Fortunately, we've already seen in the news this week that there's a lot of progress. But I think organizations in our country that's dealing with the European Union and customers in that area should very quickly get their heads around this. What can they do? What can they not do? Just because they can do it elsewhere in the world, including in Africa and in South Africa, they can no longer do it. It's almost no longer just a free rein and a cowboy kind of a world. As I said, that explainability, that responsibility, and the EU's AI Act is a risk-based system from very high risk to low risk. So, for instance, if I do a chatbot chat to my bank and I say, what is my current credit limit? That is low risk. But when we think about the weaponization of AI, autonomous weapons, and for that matter, as I've already mentioned, credit decisions, healthcare decisions, things that impact my life and my children's lives, those things should be highly regulated. Regulation is there to protect us. And it's about time that there's regulation somewhere in the world that is protecting us as consumers and humans, and hopefully it will spread across the world in a good way very quickly.
Now, there's also then the question of AI literacy amongst employees. And, just as you speak of this as kind of scaled high risk to low risk, understanding of the act, I assume that even in roles, the higher up you go in terms of accountability, maybe even cost centers, the more you're going to have to know. And this is another place, huge opportunity, but also a huge risk that we don't produce the kinds of skills or even the kind of thinking that can take in this new way of life.
It's such a good point, because we often as organizations outsource our technology to our technology departments or vendors, and that's not a bad thing. But I can just see more and more how the ownership of this technology is residing with the so-called C-suite, with the board and the directors, and in my view, particularly the chief financial officer, because there's a huge potential impact here. If I remember correctly, about 6% of your global turnover, or up to 35 million euro fines if we don't do this right. So what I find with a lot of the boards that I deal with is, even though they're very smart people, often very financially astute people, their view and their knowledge of this technology is severely limited. And I always say you don't have to become an AI expert or a data scientist, but at least get your head around what it is. What is automation? What is AI? What is this generative AI era that we are in? So I think our boards of the companies in our country, and our leadership, our executive leadership, need to do a lot and very quickly now. Whether our HR departments and our learning and development initiatives are suitable, I very much doubt that. So we have a lot to do, and very quickly.
Well, like I said, it's an opportunity and a huge threat, Johan, and I know you'll be tracking all of it for us. Always a pleasure speaking to you and learning from you. That was Johan Steyn, AI and automation thought leader and BusinessDay contributor.